Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Turin here, and today, guys, I'm going to be playing a VOLKMAR the Grim Crusade build, and I'm going to be facing off against the Greenskins. So I know a lot of you guys were asking why I'm not playing much Empire anymore, or, why am I not doing my Crusade builds anymore? And again, I decided to put this game out to remedy that situation. So as far as my army composition goes, I have a whole front line of unbreakable troops, including Flagellants, the Tattersouls, as well as Sigmar's Sons. So I really like Flagellants in general. I actually use them in a lot of matchups, even if I'm not doing a Crusade build against the Beastmen. Just generally speaking, they're a very good infantry unit against lightly armored troops. So like Orc Boys, Orc Biggins, Savage Orcs, they'll do pretty well for, how much you're paying against all of those units. These ones, when buffed right now, they do have 40 weapon strength, which is pretty good for how cheap they are at, I believe, 550. But again, on that same coin, guys, they only have 10 melee defense, and they have very low armor. Well, I shouldn't even say low. They have no armor. As you can see, they're shirtless here. They're in rags, although some of them do have like metal face cages, but that's pretty much it. So my entire front line is kind of in the Crusade theme with the Tattersouls, Flagellants, as well as Sigmar's Sons over here. I do have a group of handgunners here, and then of course I do have the silver bullets. I always call them the magic bullets, but I do have them out in the wings, and then of course I do have a steam tank. So I kind of had to choose between getting a steam tank or the Knights of the Blazing Sun, which of course are one of the most thematic kind of crusading units there. But I decided to get the steam tank this game, just mix it up a little bit, and it actually worked out pretty well. But again, the Flagellants and all those kind of cheapo units are pretty good against like Orc Boys, like I was mentioning, and Biggins. And my opponent actually did bring Trolls, so we both brought pretty goofy builds. I figured you guys would enjoy this one because of that. I also did get 2 Greatswords because, again, if you did bring like a whole line of Black Orcs, I didn't want to just send Flagellants against Black Orcs and have them get massacred. I wanted to have a little something to kind of deal with Black Orcs, but he actually only brought the Crimson Killers, so these Greatswords will definitely be pretty useful in kind of dealing with those guys. Of course, on top of all that, guys, I have the most important kind of addition to the Crusade build. I have VOLKMAR the Grim on his Pimp Chariot. So it's Magical Chariot. Of course, he has all of his different buffs, and he does have the Jade Griffin, which gives him self-healing, which is really nice. So, that being said, I did bring the Lore of Life with the Jade Wizard. I probably shouldn't have, because honestly, Flagellants, their models go down so incredibly quick that a lot of times the healing doesn't seem to be that great with them. But still, I decided to bring it with Earthbloom, as well as, Earthbloom, where is it? Earthblood, as well as Regrowth. So, really wanted to protect VOLKMAR on his Pimp cart. And when you put him on the cart, he actually does fire damage as well as magic damage. Granted, it's not super, pertinent against the Greenskins, just something to note. So I do have 2 spears in the back, which I'm going to use to kind of defend my silver bullets as well as my handgunners. And my opponent, definitely being a little bit frisky over here, decided to have 2 Goblin Wolf Riders in deep vanguard. So definitely something to look out for. So you guys saw the 2 Wolf Riders for my opponent. For the rest of his army here, he does have a whole front line of Orc Boys, which is a bit of an interesting choice. But I suppose he did invest in a Giant as well as Trolls. So I think he just wanted to kind of use the Orc Boys as fodder to allow the Trolls and the Giants to do their things. And he didn't want to get Gobbos. So he has Orc Boys here. He has some regular Trolls who did get buffed. I believe they got some basic, I don't know, I think it was a base armor buff as well as HP. So you can see their HP, I believe it used to be under 5,000. It's now over, so they got a minor buff, but still against the Empire, I think they're a bit of a risky pick. Again, Empire brings a lot of spears and units that do pretty high damage against light armor. Granted, they're still going to be really good if you can get them on the great swords. I think that's kind of be the make or break for these guys. So he also did bring the Crimson Killers. So these guys are just absolute thugs. They are so incredibly cool looking. They got the double great weapons going on, 42 weapon strength, 44 melee attack, and they have splash damage. So they hit like absolute trucks. Granted, the weakness of the Crimson Killers, and the reason I don't really bring them in any of my builds, is because if someone's using like a cannon or, a Goblobber or something like that, you can just absolutely destroy them before they get to the battlefield, just like you could a regular group of Black Orcs, and you'll be losing so many resources in the process. But still a very cool unit, and sometimes they can do some serious work. Aside from that, he did bring a Giant, another group of Trolls on the wings. He does have Night Goblin Archers back here. It doesn't look like he brought Terrestiers, so pretty interesting stuff. But again, the Empire does have a lot of like lightly armored infantry, so maybe he figured he didn't need those. And he does have Big Papa Wurzog here. Definitely a fan of this guy. He does have the Bonewood Staff, so if you guys look here, it gives plus 16 melee attack, which triggers map wide whenever he casts a spell. I never noticed that. He has like mushrooms growing on top of his staff here. So that's pretty much it for my opponent's army. He does have the Goblin Big Bosses, kind of 2 of those, I think, and that's pretty much it. So let's get right into the action, guys, and have some fun. So right now I moved up my handgunners, trying to get some initial freebies here. You can see my steam tank shooting in, and you can see these the Crimson Killers here already having taken 4 casualties, and the silver bullets are kind of just raining fire down on this Giant. So far getting some pretty good value out of these handgunners against the Crimson Killers. You definitely want to take out these really high value Black Orcs, because if they do manage to get in with their splash damage, they're going to tear it up. So they take another model's worth of damage there, but they're down to almost half HP already. So again, this is one of the reasons I don't like to bring these kind of hammers or peak gate guards or units like that, because again, they get focused down so incredibly hard. But it looks like my silver bullets do have to pull back because they're being pressured by trolls, and trolls are very, very quick, guys. They actually have 54 move speed. But in the back line, I did see that my opponent had 2 groups of Goblin Wolf Riders. I had 1 group of spears over here, and I was having a little bit of trouble kind of, allocating enough resources to protect everything, because with 2 Goblin Wolf Riders in the positioning of both my handgunners here, he could easily send one way and one the other way and make it very, very difficult for me to defend. So on the front line, the Crimson Killers, they still have 40 models, which is pretty good. So they are going to engage against flagellants, which is pretty rough, and you can see, I'll go ahead and show you guys for a minute. So when these guys get in here, they're just going to womp on these flagellants. You can see they do massive splash damage. So when they do get engaged, if they don't take a lot of casualties, you can just see the flagellants getting their salad tossed so incredibly hard in here. Granted, they didn't take a ton of damage, but they just start going flying, and of course that kind of stack damage is really going to add up. So I do pull in some great swords to help deal with those, and the flagellants and the great swords should be able to handle the Crimson Killers. And you can see all my my handgunners back here just kind of poking that giant down. But over here, he did send some orc boys around the flank. He just had more troops than me. So now I'm going to have to engage my spears here. And then I realized at that point I had to pull my silver bullets over here and try and protect both my groups of handgunners with 1 group of spears, which is really, really tough. So I decided to send the steam tank over to help win this battle to try and free up my spears a little bit quicker. And you can see I'm trying to form a bit of a shield wall, but there's no way to protect everything. So at this point, I actually pull back the Jade Wizard. I was in a pretty desperate situation here, but the giant is taking massive damage, just getting gunned down. So I figured just turn the silver bullets around, just start shooting, put him down as quickly as I can, because again, I know these Goblin Wolf Fighters will get through eventually. So the one group does charge into some of my spears, so that was a pretty good kind of defensive posture there, but they simply scurry around and jump on my group of silver bullets here, and they are going to get in there and lance them pretty good. So Goblin Wolf Riders are just one of my favorite units against Empire. They're so annoying, they're so quick, and they do very, very well at chewing up. You can see that guy flying across the screen. So, this group is definitely going to swarm, because I did pull these spears over here to protect, but I can't quite keep up with that speed. So right now, I did just move my other group of handgunners over here, and I believe I have them start shooting at the trolls, because you can see the trolls, as well as the orc boys, are doing very good against my greatswords and my flagellants over here, but it looks like I was actually going to shoot at that giant. But the steam tank over here is able to push those guys off, and now it's going to be shooting at that giant, which is going to be really, really nice. So over here, VOLKMAR the Grim on his pimp cart did take a lot of damage, but he is using the Grand Hammer of Sigmar to buff all these troops here. Unfortunately, they are terrified because of that giant, but still, that's a pretty big buff. 34 melee attack, and he's just kind of riding around trying to fight this goblin big boss, just kind of ramming him, and he's able to kind of push him off the battlefield, which is quite nice. So you guys can see the backline is just an absolute chaos right now. There's Goblin Wolf Riders running everywhere, but they actually have routed. I did pull back VOLKMAR, who did get an upgraded Earthblood, which essentially healed him to full. So very, very good value there. So right now my handgunners are going to be reforming ranks. So in the front, my flagellants, I actually have 8 flagellants, 42 greatswords here, doing a pretty good job fighting against these orc boys, but these trolls are actually performing really, really well this game. They're smashing on my greatswords, and the orc boys are doing a pretty good job of absorbing that beating. So I really, really like that from my opponent. You can see VOLKMAR the Grim has had enough of this. He rides in there, and the trolls, with their very, very low leadership, will probably rout off pretty quickly with VOLKMAR. I was going to say VOLKMAR ride, but with VOLKMAR here, he's going to do his bombardment ability, which will be pretty nice against these low-tier troops. Granted, it doesn't do a ton of damage, but it's a pretty good tool nonetheless. So the trolls here actually went from being confident to shaken within a few seconds of having VOLKMAR there. He does use the Faith Bastion, giving the 22% resistance to what's left here, but still a very, very wild fight nonetheless. In the back line, I'm finally able to get my silver bullets back online, and they're doing some great work just gunning down these trolls and really pushing back a lot of these greenskin troops. But still, those Goblin Wolf Riders, I thought I got rid of them, but again, they always come back. Very, very obnoxious stuff, but very well played by my opponent. So he went for the silver bullets. I should have been protecting them more, because again, they are much more powerful, but I did leave my spears on top of this group. So the spears, as you can see, are easily skewering these Goblin Wolf Riders, and of course, I do have the Jade Wizard back here. I really, really just wanted to keep one group online, because I knew in a close battle that would make, pretty much all the difference. But at this point, my opponent does have a very, very nice pocket of resistance right here. He does have VOLKMAR the Grim, or I'm getting that so confused, but he does have Wurzog over here, but he's getting a good surround on VOLKMAR, and I believe he just did use Effigy of Beget, which locked me down, although it did wear off, so I'm able to kind of get away on my pimp cart, but he's in hot pursuit, and there it is. He actually uses it right then, so he traps me. Very, very well played. So the trolls and all these other troops are just laying an absolute smacking. So in my kind of last desperate attempt here, I use all of VOLKMAR's buffs, just trying to keep him alive, while his reinforcements and his flagellants and his greatswords come in, but still, it's a very, very wild fight. But guys, at the end of the day, despite the circumstances looking a little bit rough for Big Papa VOLKMAR here and his 76% or 76 HP, I still do have a full health steam tank. So you can see VOLKMAR and his warrior priest unfortunately get knocked off his chariot there, and Wurzog is definitely pretty hyped about that. But Wurzog himself is pretty low. He's kind of getting enveloped by some greatswords here and some flagellants, which are able to push off a lot of these low-tier greenskin troops, and the steam tank is in perfect health. So he was allocating a lot of resources to kind of my gunners, but there was no damage being done to my steam tank this entire time. And you can see Wurzog taking a ton of damage, but the spears are going to come up and protect. He will get a nice little charge, but to be honest, he's surrounded. He's taking steam tank fire. Of course, the steam tank is still in hot pursuit, and as far as its melee damage goes, it has 113 weapon strength. So it gets in here, it terrifies him, and is most certainly going to push him off the battlefield. So very, very tough situation, and he actually gets shattered and then just absolutely rammed off his pig there. So pretty wild stuff. Definitely was not able to bring the bacon there, but definitely a very, very valiant attempt from Warzog. And on that coin, he did take out my VOLKMAR, so very, very good stuff. His Goblin Archers over here, they're huge performers against the Flagellants, because the Flagellants with their 0 armor are going to have a little bit of problems against a lot of these units, but Flagellants will shine against Orc Boys. It's kind of like the type of unit they are designed to beat down. And of course, the Greatswords coming in, allowing the Flagellants to do the shock damage, the Greatswords are going to come in and kind of clean up shop here. So if we look at kind of the overarching theme of the battle, the balance of power is still very even. So I have 214 troops to his 366 at the moment. He has 2 somewhat healthy groups of Goblin Archers, but still this one group is shaken, and I honestly don't think he has enough stopping power to deal with the steam tanks. That's going to be very tough. And you can see the tanks are shooting in here, attacking the Orc Boys, and being attacked by artillery does also come along with kind of a leadership hit, so that's going to be very tough to deal with as well. So over here, the handgunners are pressuring a lot of his missile units. What I wanted to do is kind of use the Greatswords to collapse his line, and then use my handgunners to collapse these Night Goblins. Because again, I didn't want to shoot my guys in the back, but it looks like I got a little bit desperate there and decided to charge in. You can see a little bit of friendly fire there as well. Are those actually fanatics? I don't think they are. I think they're just regular ones. So we're able to push off these Orc Boys as well as these Night Goblins here. But he still does have a fairly healthy contingent of Orc Boys here, 58 models. And it looks like he has, how many here? Does he have 57 and 58 here? So still quite a few troops, very, very low on HP. But they're going to put up a pretty good fight. You can see I actually have 1 Flagellant here and then 1 Sigmar's Sons and some Greatswords. So it's going to be a pretty pitched fight. They get in here, but he doesn't have much AP. So honestly, I think these Greatswords are going to be very tough. And you can see he's taking a lot of crossfire from these handgunners. And the steam tank is going to obviously probably turn its focus over here shortly. So the steam tank actually gets engaged on by 2 Goblin Big Bosses. So the Goblin Big Bosses just get terrified almost immediately. Steam tanks are so incredibly hard to kill, and they're just shooting in there, chasing them off, and they're most certainly, probably done for this game, I would say. As far as the rest of his troops go, he has some Night Goblins here, a lot of kind of shattered troops over in the distance, but at the end of the day, he didn't have enough kind of, stopping power to deal with that steam tank. One of the units that obviously did have very heavy AP for him that might have been able to kind of chase the steam tank and put a lot of pressure on it would have been that Giant, but the Giant got gunned down so incredibly quickly. Despite the fact that my opponent played very, very well with his Goblin Wolf Riders and was just constantly making my spears run, he got some very, very good charges. You guys can see he got 49 and 28 kills respectively, so very solid work, and he made these Trolls really perform. The Trolls over, I believe, was on the western flank. They did really solid. I mean, they beat through my Greatswords. They were very, very good sustained damage. The Crimson Killers did okay, but for how expensive they are, I think he could have gotten like a regular group of Black Orcs and then got another group of Goblin Wolf Riders. Imagine how like devastating 3 groups would have been back there. That would have been an absolute nightmare. So anyways, as far as my army goes, I mean, the Flagellants did okay. They did their job. I really like Sigmar's Sons, though. They're a very, very good unit. Their melee attack and melee defense are actually both in the 40s, which is so incredibly good. And of course, the steam tank was, truly the MVP. The resources he had to go after it would have been the Giant, maybe the Trolls, because again, they're really the only heavy armor-piercing units, but still, they kind of got caught up on the front line and got routed off pretty quickly. So, well played to my opponent, Gorgut's Headhunter over there. It was a lot of fun. Look forward to seeing you again on Ladder, and I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of semi-crusade build from VOLKMAR. Have an excellent night, and take care.